I don't remember exactly when I stopped counting the days. In the zone, time rots, just like the abandoned houses of Pripyat. The clocks here have either long since stopped, or they lie to you. The sun rises through a gray fog, and the nights stretch on longer than they should. My name is Artem, though most stalkers have long called me Sivi, Gray. It's not because of my age, it's because of my hair. It turned gray just 6 months after I got stuck in Chernobyl.
I came here for the money once, like everyone else. An acquaintance told me about artifacts that could be sold for insane sums. I was stupid back then. I thought the zone was just abandoned cities and radiation. But radiation is the least of your problems here.
I entered the zone with a group of 5. The commander was Baroda, an old stalker with a crooked nose and a permanent cigarette between his teeth. Along with him were Klim, Grotch, and the Volkov brothers. We crossed through a gap in an old fence under the rain. The forest was silent. Too silent. Not even the wind moved the trees. If you hear the crackle of a Geiger counter, don't be a hero, Borida said then. And watch your step. The anomalies here don't forgive. I laughed back then. 2 hours later, I stopped. Klim was walking ahead and suddenly just vanished. It was as if he had been torn out of reality. First there was a strange metallic sound, then a flash, and all that remained were shreds of his backpack falling onto the wet asphalt. We didn't even realize what had happened at first.
We reached an old farm near Pripyat late at night. That's where we saw the first mutants. First, there was a rasping sound. Then, a creature resembling a dog, but hairless, crawled out of a dark shed. Its skin was gray and stretched tight over its bones, and its eyes glowed yellow. 2 more ran out behind it. "Blind dogs!" Grotch shouted.
The shooting started. The gunshots were deafening, the echoes dancing between the empty buildings. One dog lunged straight at me. I fired at point-blank range. Its blood was black. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by a small fire and listened to something pacing around the farm in the darkness. 3 days later, we found an artifact. It lay inside an electrical anomaly between some old trucks. A blue light pulsed within it like a heartbeat. Wilda said we could buy an apartment in Kiev with what it was worth. That's when the bandits found us.
There were 7 of them, wearing black jackets, carrying old assault rifles. They stepped out of the fog as quietly as if they had been waiting for us this entire time. "Weapons on the ground, stalkers," their leader said. "Backpacks, too." Borota tried to negotiate. It was useless. The first shot rang out a second later. Grotch fell instantly. The bullet hit him in the neck. We dove behind the vehicles. A firefight erupted. I remember the smell of wet rust and gunpowder. I remember Volkov screaming in pain. And then I heard a roar.
It wasn't human. A bloodsucker lunged out of the darkness. A tall, gaunt mutant with long arms and tentacles around its mouth. It moved in jolts, nearly invisible in the air. The bandits stopped shooting at us and turned their guns on it. The bloodsucker ripped one of them clean in half. Panic set in. I ran without looking back. Behind me, I heard bursts of automatic fire, screams, and the wheezing of the mutant. Then, everything went silent.
When I finally stopped, I was alone. No group, no map, no way back. The rain fell like a wall. I hid in the old basement of a school in Pripyat. It smelled of mold and decay. Children's drawings still hung on the walls. That night, I understood the most important thing. The zone doesn't like those who come here for money. It either kills you or it keeps you. I lived in that basement for 3 weeks. I ate canned food, drank Rusty. One morning, I heard footsteps above. Slow, cautious. I grabbed my rifle and headed up the stairs. 3 bandits were standing in the hallway. One of them was that same leader. He recognized me too. "Look who survived," he smirked. "And here we were, looking for you." I realized then that they hadn't found me by accident. They wanted the artifact. But they didn't know that before he died, Borodot had tucked it into my backpack. And now, because of this piece of glowing stone, the zone was about to turn my life into a living hell. This is a great cliffhanger. Do you want to continue the story, or perhaps adjust the translation of certain Stalker terms? The bullet caught the bandit in the chest, and he was thrown back into the doorway. The rest opened fire instantly. The school walls splintered under the hail of lead, plaster raining down on my head. I dove into the chemistry lab and smashed the window with the butt of my rifle. Shards of glass sprayed everywhere as the cold wind bit into my face. The jump from the second floor was high enough to nearly break my legs, but fear proved stronger than pain. I sprinted across the schoolyard while shouts echoed behind me. "He's bolted! Get him!" Pripyat greeted me with dead streets. Empty high-rises stared down with black windows like hollow eyes. Somewhere in the distance, a Geiger counter began to chatter. I ducked behind a rusted bus and nearly collided with a Snork. Once it had been human. Now it was a creature with a twisted body and elongated limbs. It moved on all fours, its head twitching violently. The Snork snarled and lunged. I barely managed to dodge. Its claws ripped through my jacket sleeve. I fired a burst directly into its face. The mutant slumped, but a second later, another crawled out of a nearby stairwell. Then another. Once it had been human. Now it was a creature with a twisted body and elongated limbs. It moved on all fours, its head twitching violently. The Snork snarled and lunged. I barely managed to dodge. Its claws ripped through my jacket sleeve. I fired a burst directly into its face. The mutant slumped, but a second later, another crawled out of a nearby stairwell. Then another. I had seen mutants before, but never one like this. A massive head, gray skin, and eyes that turned your insides to ice. It didn't run. It simply walked toward us, slow and deliberate. One of the bandits suddenly screamed and began firing wildly into his own men. A second fell to his knees, clutching his head in agony. The controller was breaking their minds. I felt a massive pressure in my temples, my vision blurred. It felt as if someone was rooting through my brain with filthy hands. I grabbed a grenade, yanked the pin, and hurled it into the darkness. The explosion deafened me. Part of the ceiling collapsed. I heard the mutant shriek and scrambled for the exit. By the time I reached the street, dusk had settled. I didn't hear the bandits anymore. Perhaps the controller killed them. Perhaps they are still wandering somewhere in the dark with shattered minds. After that day, I stopped looking for a way out of the zone. You can't survive here by remaining the person you used to be. I learned to set traps for mutants. I learned to find safe routes through the shifting anomalies. I learned to hear danger before it even arrived. A year passed, then a second. My basement became a home.
I furnished it with old scraps, brought in a generator, and found food supplies in hidden warehouses. I even tamed a blind dog. He followed me silently, and now stalkers began to whisper legends about me. They said that in the heart of the zone lives Civi, the one who knows every path, the man who survived bloodsuckers, a controller, and the bandits. But they didn't know the truth. I didn't survive. The zone simply made me a part of itself. One winter evening, a young stalker appeared at my shelter. He was maybe 20, terrified, thin, his hands trembling.
"Help me," he rasped. "The bandits are chasing me."
I looked at him in silence. Once, I had been exactly like him. Naive, stupid. I gave him some canned food and let him stay the night. That night, he asked me endless questions about the zone.
"Why don't you leave this place?"
He asked. I remained silent for a long time. Then I looked into the darkness outside the window, where the shadows of mutants drifted through the snow. Because the zone doesn't let go of those who have learned to live here, I replied. In the morning, the boy was gone, along with my backpack and the artifact I had kept all these years. I stood by the door and watched his footprints in the snow. Somewhere far away, the sound of gunshots already echoed. The zone had started its game all over again. That ending is quintessential Stalker. No good deed goes unpunished, and the cycle continues. Would you like to write a follow-up about what Civi does next? Or perhaps move on to a different scenario? The snow fell in large clumps, burying the young stalker's tracks. But I saw them anyway. Years in the zone had taught me to notice the smallest things. A snapped twig, a boot print, a smear of blood on a rusted sheet of metal. The boy was fleeing north, toward the old factories and territories where even veteran stalkers are loath to tread. My dog paced beside me, growling softly. He sensed the danger too. I checked my rifle, threw my old pack over my shoulder, and followed. The sky over Pripyat was black. Not from the night, from the clouds. The zone loved days like these. The air smelled of wet concrete and soot. Far off, a burst of automatic fire echoed. Damn it! I opened fire first. The bullets shredded one snork in midair, but the rest were already leaping down. One landed directly in front of me and lunged. I managed to smash its head with the butt of my rifle. I felt the bone shatter. A second mutant knocked me off my feet. Its claws scraped against my body armor, and a sharp pain flared in my shoulder. My dog lunged for the mutant's throat, and they tumbled together into the snow. I whipped out my knife and drove it under the slope's jaw. The mutant went limp. Then, silence. Only heavy breathing and the wind whistling between the buildings. The dog was hurt. A deep gash ran along his flank. I bandaged him, though I knew he wouldn't last long. "Hang in there, friend," I whispered. He looked at me with his milky white eyes and silently stood up. By evening, I reached the old Jupiter factory. Once, they manufactured electronics here. Now it was just concrete shells and darkness. And people. I spotted a fire in a second-story window. Bandits. I climbed the stairs cautiously. Inside, the air reeked of cheap cigarettes and alcohol. I heard voices. "The kid said he's got the artifact," someone was saying. "Tomorrow we take him to Sultan." Sultan. I knew that name. One of the most ruthless bandit leaders in the zone. If the artifact reached him, a massacre would follow. People get slaughtered in droves over things like that here. My Geiger counter chirped.
loud, erratic. Everyone in the room froze. The floor began to vibrate. An emission, a bandit whispered. A second later, the wind outside began to howl. The blowout had started. The most terrifying thing that can happen in the zone. The sky outside the windows turned a bruised red. The earth shook so violently that concrete dust rained from the ceiling. A low, haunting hum echoed from the distance, as if the zone itself were waking up. And then we heard the roar. A bloodsucker. It was seeking shelter too. The mutant stepped out of a dark workshop, nearly invisible. Only a shimmering distortion moved through the air. The boy froze in terror. "Don't move," I hissed. But it was too late. The bloodsucker lunged, its tentacles unfurling like a maw. I fired a burst. The mutant roared, but didn't fall. Then, the entire factory shuddered from a fresh wave of the emission. The lights failed, and in the total darkness, we heard something massive begin to stir deep below the plant. The introduction of the blowout changes everything. It's no longer a hunt. It's a desperate scramble for survival, where enemies have to decide if they'll die together or kill each other first. Should we see what's waking up beneath the Jupiter plant?